Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today I'm in this 2017 BMW 5 Series, and I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, hang on a minute Matt, you're losing the plot. You've done a video with one of those before. Well yes, technically I have, and I was impressed. But that model was a 520d. Now this model today is a 530e. That's right, this is a plug-in hybrid. I've often said that the 5 Series is one of the best cars money can buy. The 530d is just about perfect. But times are changing. Diesels nowadays are about as relevant as the fax machine. Try driving a diesel into any big city and people with confusing pronouns will tell you to go back to where you came from, only with more expletives. Thankfully this hybrid 5 Series is much more socially acceptable. For a start, they, them, won't even be able to hear you coming. It is very quiet this, eerily so. Let's look at the facts then. Under the bonnet you get a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine which produces about 180 horsepower. Doesn't sound all that remarkable, does it? But on top of that you get an electric motor which produces about 90 odd. When the old and the new come together, the results are incredible. That feels properly quick. It'll do 0 to 60 in around 6 seconds and it keeps going until it gets to 146 miles an hour. And thanks to the instant torque you get from an electric motor, acceleration from a complete standstill is shocking and silent. Because this is a plug-in hybrid, you can plug it into a domestic socket and you'll cruise around then on battery power alone. If you charge this overnight, in fact it only takes about 5 hours, you'll get a range of around 30 miles the next day. Now you might snigger at that, but if you think about it sensibly, that'll cover most people's commutes. Most people could drive it 25 miles from their house to the job, charge it while they're at work, and then drive home again for free. It'd certainly cover my commute anyway. I charged this in the garage overnight, and when I jumped in it this morning I had a range of 28 miles. I've done around 5 miles in it so far and it's currently showing me a range of 19 miles. But the electric range depends on many things, for example the outside temperature, how you drive it, whether you've got your heated seats on or your air conditioning on, all those sorts of things. The good thing about this plug-in hybrid business is that when your battery range goes to 0, you can just run it on petrol. No range anxiety. No sweaty palms. In the real world it just means you'll never be panicking looking for a plug socket. This to me is the best of both worlds. We're all being forced right now into EVs, which to be honest terrifies me. I just don't think we're ready, and I don't think it's the answer. What I think is that it's a knee-jerk reaction, and I think it's a big mistake. The plug-in hybrid just makes much more sense. You can whiz around in utter silence, but if for example you need to do a 200-mile trip to the capital this afternoon, you can. You don't have to worry about charging it up. And you can still use it to go on your summer road trip to Antibes, without the fear of running out of electricity. Or without having to work out the French for, excuse me, do you have a 3-pin to 2-pin Euro-style plug adapter, s'il vous plaît? It's ideal. It feels much more civilised than the diesel. There's no vibrations, there's no noise of a clattery engine. It feels really refined. Of course, you'll argue that the regular diesel engine is extremely fuel efficient. It is. It'll average the best part of 50 miles per gallon. So you might be wondering if this plug-in hybrid version is that much better. Is this worth paying the premium for? Well, BMW claim that this will average 141 miles per gallon. 141. I think that claim's a bit misleading to be honest, because that takes into account the 29 miles of range on the battery. And to be able to compute that sort of calculation needed, your name would have to be Carol Vorderman. So we've got 29 miles range, petrol costs £1.68 a litre, it'll do 40 miles per gallon from the petrol, electricity costs £2.22 per kilowatt, times it by 6, multiply it by 82, carry the 4 over, 141 miles per gallon. Voila. It's all a bit confusing, isn't it? But what I can tell you is, in the real world, I've driven from Romley to Buxton on electricity alone, which has sort of made me feel a bit better inside. I don't feel as wasteful. With regards to the running costs, I think what you've got to remember is that once the battery is completely depleted, then you're just running a 5 Series with a 2-litre petrol engine, so that'll only do about 40 miles per gallon. What you've got to do is try and eke out as many miles on electricity as you possibly can. But that's perfectly doable. You just find yourself doing it naturally with any hybrid. Apart from those moments when you drive this like a member of the Women's Institute because you want to eke out as many miles on electricity as you possibly can, it does feel like any other 5 Series I've driven. Which is to say, very good. I love the 5 Series. They've got the mixture right between comfort and sportiness. I think the real selling point with this car is that it looks just like any other regular 5 Series, so you won't look like some sort of virtue signalling twonk. Take right now for example, I'm sat here at 60 miles an hour, just being overtaken by a Fiat 500 which is quite embarrassing, and I'm running on battery power alone. It's much quieter than a diesel, and even a petrol. It's just very civilised. I can now see why EV drivers look a bit smug. Just brings it out in you. The 530e does weigh quite a bit more than your average 5 Series, but you'd never know. It handles beautifully, as every other 5 Series I've ever driven has. The steering is just about perfect, there's no body roll. It is, as I keep saying, about as good as it gets. The inside's all sensibly laid out, and it's about as luxurious as you'd expect. You get sat-nav, heated seats, DAB, 2 cup holders, plenty of storage, a nice comfortable armrest. All of the things you'd expect from a car like this. It's a really easy car to live with. And the quilted leather you get on the seats of this particular model is beautiful. It has an 8-speed automatic gearbox, just like every other 5 Series. And just like every other 5 Series, it's excellent. The only thing that's worse on this model is the boot space. They've got to put those batteries somewhere, and they've chosen to put them under the boot floor. So the cargo space has been reduced from 530 litres down to 410. But that's still plenty of space in my opinion. You'll easily get a couple of suitcases in there without any issues. I love the 530 diesel, but having driven this one now, I'd definitely opt for this. It's a no-brainer. You'd have to know this area well for this piece of information to be relevant, but I've just driven from Romley to Tideswell and I'm still on battery power. The petrol engine just hasn't kicked in once. It's so smooth this, you'd almost think there's a V12 under the bonnet. You just can't hear it or feel it. With this 530e, BMW have turned a good car into a great one. That's mainly thanks to the fact that it still has an internal combustion engine on board. If this were a full EV with a range of 220 miles, I'd now be panicking thinking where I'm going to charge it. But I've got no issues at all, I've still got half a tank of petrol. There is one negative with the 530e, and that's the range. You see, with a 530 diesel, or a 520 diesel certainly, in the right conditions you'll get about 800 miles from a full tank. This will only do about 400 between fill-ups. Still, that's not much of an issue, is it? The 530e was available from 2017 onwards, and used prices here in the UK start at around £17,000. But that's going to buy you a low-spec model with about 130,000 miles on the clock. You'll have to spend mid-20s to find one that's done less than 60,000 miles. Reliability-wise, it's a bit of an unknown, but what I would recommend you do is that you service it regularly at your BMW main dealer. That way you'll always be up to date with things like software updates, which is a big deal these days, even more so on a car like this. Right, on my little battery gauge now it says I've got a range of 0 miles, and yet I'm still running on electricity. Any minute now I'm expecting the petrol engine to kick in. Every time you use the brakes or go down a hill, it regenerates and puts some charge back into the battery. So if you were to drive this very gingerly, you would get extra miles out of it. My range now says 0, and yet we're still on battery. This is incredible, this. If you think pragmatically, there's less to go wrong with this than a diesel. There's no DPF, no AdBlue, no dual mass flywheel, no EGR issues. All those things that can be common on a diesel, this just doesn't have. Plus petrol's slightly cheaper than diesel, and you don't get a horrible oily nozzle at the pumps. I suppose if you're unlucky you could have issues with the 2-litre petrol engine, issues with the turbo, timing chain, that sort of thing. But if you service it properly, then that shouldn't happen. I just think by choosing one of these, you're basically future-proofing your motor in. I mean, I love the 530d, but I'm not sure I'd hand over £20,000 for one right now in this current climate. Euro 6 diesels are fine for now, but how long before they move the goalposts again? You'd be better off looking for the hybrid version, just for peace of mind, if nothing else. Well, I think that's about it. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you've got any comments or questions, let me know below in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you're interested in getting into the used car business, then check out my online course. I've created an online platform with nearly 100 videos which explain every single aspect of the used motor trade. From where to start, funding, branding, sourcing cars, preparing cars for sale, it's all there, so do check it out. And it's free for the first 30 days, and only £27 a month after that. And you can cancel at any point, there's no contract. So, yeah, cheers guys, I'll see you next time.